Hello, my name is Caroline Nevian. I'm Associate Professor with the Participatory Systems Group, part of section Systems Engineering at Delft University of Technology. Today I want to share some research of mine which is concerned with how you can make values like presence and trust operational for your research, for your design process or for your possible intervention. It's a tool and a way of analyzing and a way of designing. Before we do so, I want to go into you with some background. We now live in a new paradigm of human experience. For a long time, human being was the measure of all things. Then we had tools to measure us, like blood pressure, heartbeat. But now we can measure humankind. Like with TomTom, we feed data, we get data back live, and we adapt the way we drive with our car. We change our route. We can also feed all our blood pressure data, for example, to a grand system. And you know which city has more stress than another. This is just a joke, but I'm just saying, we just see only the top of the iceberg of the potential of the new big data real live streaming to us. And that changes our human experience very fundamentally. It means as systems engineers, we design communities of systems and people. We don't only have communities of people. Every community now has electricity, mobile telephone, internet, and more and more and more. When you design, you have to think whether you design high trust or low trust. Whether you design for participation or whether you design for surveillance. What are the elements of this new meta-design paradigm? Because, of course, we move on this X. We move on this X between low trust and high trust, between participation and surveillance. What you also have to realize is that in surveillance, we conquer, we control, we follow, we delegate, we make, we craft. And a very different dynamic of power is to nurture. So you see that conquering, maintaining and nurturing and all those other verbs below indicate a very different dynamic of power. And most systems combine these. But where do we conquer and where do we nurture? Where do we follow, where do we deliver, and where do we contribute? How do we shape governance and participation for this? We really don't know yet. In my group, we ask ourselves the question, an interdisciplinary research group with about 40 people, how to design for the possibility to act and accept responsibility in these complex network environments that we now live today. And for us this means we have to design for trust in these complex environments, for autonomy, we cannot be surveilled all the time, and for engagement. When we do so, you have to realize that we design participatory system. It's the social layer, the distributed ICT, and the infrastructure. And these all three layers are one system. You cannot only design social or only distributed ICT or only infrastructure. You have to design the whole thing at once. So what is essential in this design from the perspective of human beings? Is that we have presence. And presence is the capacity to steer towards survival and well-being. So it's not surviving and well-being, no, it's steering towards those. So it's an action. This work is done by Antonio Damasio, Giuseppe Riva, John and Eva Waterworth, and they build on the work of Spinoza. He calls it the conatus. Also, presence is a trade-off. So here I often tell the story of the alley dark in the dark night. At the end of the night, I'm on high heels, I'm tired, I'm on my way home, I have to go through this alley, and there's this huge guy at the end of the alley. And he looks a bit grumpy. And I think, can I pass him or not? How close do I have to get before I decide to pass or run out the other way? Or do I need to have his social network data? I mean, what do I need to know? Anyway, we make a trade-off. I realize I'm tired, I'm wearing high heels. I don't like grumpy guys, so I just go the other way. So what I mean to say, as you saw, this is a trade-off of trust and presence. Yeah? I don't trust the guy, I change my presence, I go away. So in my dissertation, which is this work is about, I introduced a UTPA framework to be with you in unity of time, place and action. And U stands for relation, so it's 4 relations. And if you look at this graph, you see that we live here. We live in this white space where we can act, where we laugh, where we love, where we have children. But we design our systems in this black space here. There, you don't breathe, you don't act, you don't love. How can we put our trust here and we live here? This is a very big problem in our time. Because we don't know, as Manuel Castells frames it, we don't know how to connect the space of places with the space of flows. I worked with 44 authors, designers, artists, scientists, academics, on this question, what happens when one witnesses the other? Witnessing being the sort of dramatic form in which the trade-off of presence and trust is made. And we worked on those 4 dimensions, and what's very interesting, we found that in every dimension there are 4 factors that are significant for making trade-offs. I cannot go into all these factors here in this lecture, please read the article, that's also in the same MOOC. There I do explain these factors. And I will explain how you work with it. So what you do is, like here you see the 4 factors. You see that every factor has a line where you can point from 1 to 10. You add those up, and you have in the middle you have again, you add up, and then you get a score. And you know whether people trust or don't trust. So what's interesting, for example, if you think about an insurance company, you know, trust is expensive, so the best is to offer no place, no office, no time, no synchronicity, no relation, and no action. So you just have a website, for example. So on this website they offer a little bit of action. I can buy an insurance. So I buy an insurance. Then I get an accident. When it's a small accident, I will just go back to the website, type in a thing, and then they will give me the money back, I assume. So it's a small thing, small action. But when my accident is a bit larger, I really want to phone. So I get a phone number, and I can phone, and I get a person. And this a person will talk to me about what happened to me. It's not someone I know, it's not someone I can phone back, but at least it's a person, it's synchronicity. I get time, yeah? So first I got action, now I get time. Now my accident is even worse, yeah? It's like a serious accident, and it's something you don't want to have to repeat again and again. So the moment I phone now, and first time I tell my terrible accident, they say, okay, this is so terrible, she needs an account manager. They are going to offer relation now to me. So now I have already action, I have time, synchronicity, I get relation. And now my terrible accident happened in another country, so we get big lawsuits, terrible situation. Now I have to go to the office and meet with the lawyers of my insurance company. So you see, trust is expensive, and you can go through these factors, building up your process. And when you do so, you can also use it to make a portrait of a certain organization, of a certain person, of a certain product even. So then you get a portrait of this person, product, or process. And these portraits can be very different. And it is like a talking tool. So how it goes, like if you, for example, this is the tool that I can give to you, you can also download it in the same MOOC. You take your situation and you first have to define, for example, with duration of engagement, is a long duration good or is a short duration good? So a long duration, for example, living in a neighborhood, you want long duration, creates more safety. But if it's about downloading a pack of software, you want short duration. So then short duration gets a 10. And otherwise, if you live there for a long time, then if you live there for 50 years, you get a 10, and 3 months you only get a 1. So it's contextual. You have to define for every factor what's good, what's bad, and you have to come to agreement in your design team what is good and what is not good. And then you get these portraits, and you get different portraits. So here you see one of the research we did on social safety in a neighborhood. We did a visual research that clearly shows low trust. We did research with the citizens there and the residents that was clearly low trust. But interesting, the local police, they put a lot of effort, they had medium trust. So you see there's a discrepancy between these different portraits. And if you then put them over each other, you can see where a design space is emerging. So we then do this in a visualization in which we play with the different factors to see what effect it would have if we do an intervention. And in the end, we have a clear picture of where we will design and where we will not design. In our case, with the neighborhood, it was very interesting that usually people do interventions for safety in the neighborhood. They want residents to act. Well, here we find the residents don't want to do anything. They also want no reputation system in the neighborhood. They want to be safe and free. And the only thing they actually like is rhythm, which is like 9 o'clock, all the mothers at the school, or the local policeman at 12 o'clock, or at 5 at the football club, and at 6 at the market. And this rhythm creates already a sense of safety. And people don't have to do anything for it. So, I hope you enjoy making your own portraits, your own visualizations, and then I want to thank you for your attention.